Greetings, as I would tell it to you. You're listening to Opal Frequencies. This is yet another edition of Department S. Continuing an investigation, as a matter of fact, into an analogy widely available on the internet, presenting how the mind of the proverbial devil may actually work. Now, for those of you that are engaging with this for the first time, it's strongly urged to go back to the previous episodes. And the reason for this is because as this process proceeds, less and less will be explained, simply because the groundwork has already been put in place. And thus, if a person joins further in, they're going to find it difficult to understand some of the positions taken. It's simply because they're not privy to the earlier foundational work that serves to put in place a framework of understanding in terms of how to think about what is being spoken about here. Well, let's continue. Now, as some may recall, the questioner is in a position because of some type of mental connection to converse with a part of the mind that is the antithesis in terms of what the mind is designed to be connected to. This is the type of logistics that has been touched upon earlier on. It has also been suggested that if there is any legitimacy to a degenerate mind, which the devil certainly must be, it's suggesting that this degenerate mind cannot be trusted because it's degenerate. It's the antithesis of a regenerative mind in terms of the station, that is to say where the connection is located, the character, that is to say the type of occult found at the lower levels of the astral light, and what that then does when moving through a human being, and ultimately what is then physically experienced in terms of how the person is and what they ultimately do. This will be the carnal aspect of things. This is the end result, the definitive result. So it's crucially important to locate exactly where this conversation is taking place, which has been done in previous episodes, and that furthermore, this location can be found at the lowest of the low. It is suggesting then that the mind has been lowered to a place where a connection has been made into the occult with something that may know more than the person asking the questions, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that what knows more, or what is able to provide information, what is able to provide answers to questions about the carnal world, is actually refined. And this is a crucial understanding about people that dabble in the occult. For do see, if a person opens themselves up to an intelligence, just because the intelligence may be more informed or better informed than the inquirer, does not ensure that what is providing this information is actually refined. It may be quite degenerate. And certainly, if the questioner is aware that they are now engaging with something in their mind that is degenerate because it's recognized as being the devil, well, this situation then speaks for itself. Thus, almost very quickly, the so-called devil, having accepted the demand, presents a demand of its own. And this demand is that the questioner should refer to the devil as Your Majesty.
But you must address me with more respect. During this interview, you will address me as Your Majesty.
Well, what's really important about this is, as it's been mentioned before, but which we'll briefly recap, it's to do with the fact that when a person ascribes particular names to something that they're engaging with, within the name may also be a semi-conscious location in terms of the station and the character. Now, if a person is faced with another human being who insists on being called Your Highness, this will provoke and summon, as a matter of fact, particular types of psychology, particular types of personalities, behavioral patterns, because a person will externally identify with this name and all that lives and is connected to it in terms of the histrionic of how people behave when confronted with royalty. In the same way, if a person is confronted with a priest and they've grown up in a cultural environment that has taught them to respect priests, they will immediately switch into a particular type of behavioral pattern that automatically prevents them from swearing or from being offensive. If a person is confronted with their mother, their grandmother, a teacher, a policeman, a judge, it's not too difficult to see that each person grows up with certain engravings which condition the life to react instinctively to certain people based on what they perceive their position in society to be. Now, if a person is seeking enlightenment, for instance, and suddenly they come across someone who refers to themselves as a master teacher or some sort of guru or the embodiment of the second coming of Christ, if they believe in this type of ideology, there's nothing to prevent them summoning in themselves certain emotions, certain behavioral patterns, certain instinctual reactions to things, certain habits, certain pre-formed semi-conscious proclivities, preponderances, attitudes and behaviors which are perfectly aligned to the cultural appreciation of what it is they think they're engaging with. The problem, the issue lies in how genuine is the person in relation to what they claim to be. It's really easy for a person to wake up one day and decide that they are the savior of the world or a divine master teacher that's come to save the entire humanity. And of course, what one needs to then look at is the fruits of their labor, the histrionic of their life, what they're doing, how they are, and of course, what they are actually connected to. This is the most important thing. The station and the character speaks for themselves. However, if a person is not able to do that because they don't have the reference, or if a person is more interested, and this is the point, if a person is more interested in what they can consume from what it is that is insisting on being called a certain thing, if this consideration becomes the most important thing in their life, what they can actually get from the engagement, they may willingly overlook the reality of the fact that despite this information perceived to them as being what they want, there may be a price they have to pay for this information because of where they're getting it from. Now, simply put, if the questioner in this scenario can only get the information that they perceive they need to get or need to understand or need to be privy to by lowering their standards so low that they connect winningly to what is arbitrarily referred to as the proverbial devil, that being the lowest part of their own mind, it is not difficult to appreciate. The lower a person goes in their mind, the more polarized the mind becomes, and the more things fluctuate between two extreme polarities, two extreme opposites, that being positive and negative. Now, the issue with focusing on the extremes of positive and negative is one creates a buffer in between these two variables, in between these two polarities. On the one hand, one sees the positive aspects in their life as what they actually want, what they like, what is good, what is right for them, this kind of thing. And then there is the fact of what it is they actually want from the engagement. And what they want from the engagement produces so much emotion in them that it blocks the other side of the coin from their view. In other words, a person can quite willingly engage with something perilous, engage with something not good, and not realize that it's not good because what they're receiving clouds their mind. It obscures the full scope of the reality of what it is they're doing. And many people in the world today, they ask, like, why would a person do that if they knew it was wrong? It's because they can ignore the fact of what they're doing to be quote unquote wrong in light of what it is they're receiving. They can discount or even ignore the reality of the fact that they may be breaking certain laws, whether they be cultural laws, carnal laws, or divine laws in terms of the pedigree of their own life and how important it is to keep high standards. These things may be ignored if by lowering their standards they can receive some type of information which can be exchanged for power, profit and promotion. And it is this exchange of power, profit and promotion that obscures a person's ability to see both sides of the equation, both sides of what it is they're doing. Yes, of course, they may be receiving something that in the short term may be valuable, but it obscures their ability to perceive how damaging what they have received and the relationship that they have engendered with this something can be very dangerous in the long term, in the permanency of their life. But having said that, let's look at the questioner's first concern, which is,
have you proof of your claim?
Yes, plenty of it.
Of what does your proof consist?
has the devil proof of its claim that 98% of the population, 98% of the human race is under its degenerate control? Now, if this estimation is true, the first thing that comes to mind is the 2% that are not under the full sway of a degenerate influence in their own mind are a very rare commodity in this world. And to be included in that 2% is a very big deal, because the human race is designed to be regenerative. And if only 2% of the human race is being regenerative, well, this really does point towards the value of trying to live a regenerative life, in the face of the fact that so few people are actually trying to do so. 98% of the people are, in actual fact, not trying to do so, according to what is being stated within the focus of this investigation. It's suggesting then 98% of the human race are, to a greater or lesser degree, inveigled. But on a deeper level, see that this then can be seen in the small as well as the big. Now, what does that mean in the small? It means that in the small, in order for 98% of the people to be inveigled by this degenerate influence, it's suggesting that within the life itself, within each life themselves, there is a battle going on between that which moves the human being to live a regenerative life, to live a purposeful life, and that which magnetically drives the life to seek power, profit, and promotion. It is not saying that power, profit, and promotion is a good or bad thing, but what it is saying is the pursuit of power, profit, and promotion as a means to an end cannot be accomplished whilst seeking to live a regenerative life. This is what is clearly being pointed to. And so, if one can look into the world and see that a large majority of the people are moving towards the more coarse or carnal aspects of life, well, this is certainly a large confirmation of what is being claimed by what this questioner is engaging with in their own mind. And as a matter of fact, the answer coming from the devil is,
of many things. If you want answers, you will address me as Your Majesty. Some things you will understand, some you will not. In order that you may get my viewpoint, I shall describe myself and correct the false notions people have of me and my place of abode.
Now, what's really critical to understand here is the ambiguity and inherent confusion in the answer given by the devil. Because if one notices very carefully, the devil says, of many things, if you want answers, you will address me as Your Majesty. So this now is an insistence that if this interview is to proceed any further, the questioner has to concede and refer to the devil as what? Your Majesty. And it's already been suggested that the minute this is done, this will make the low point, the lowest point in the mind, the highest point, and it will bring the highest point down to the lowest point, because the devil is clearly located at the most furthest part away, the most definitive, and that is to say, furthest part away from the cause, from the pristine cause of the mind, located at the first domain. And if a person lowers themselves within their own mind to subvert the high, to bring the high to the low and the low to the high, this is exactly what inveiglement consists of. But it's even more subversive than that, isn't it? Because if the person is greedy enough to throw caution to the wind by rationalizing this request in terms of saying something like, well, it's just a name, as long as I get what I want, as long as I get the answers I want, as long as I get whatever it is they're looking for, the bag as it seems to be these days, or the fame, the recognition, the power, the profit and promotion, that's what we're speaking about. No matter what the latest colloquialism might be, it's all about power, profit and promotion. You know, it's really interesting. For the most part, when people do get into any kind of confrontation, especially as it's starting to appear now within the mass anti-social media of the internet age, of the internet world, it appears as though people become terribly confused as to why it is there's so much conflict, so much confusion, so much confrontation. The answer is very simple. In these realms, if a person doesn't have a very clear idea of why they're doing what they're doing, which does not fall into the category of power, profit and promotion, well then it's going to lead to competition, because power is about competition, promotion is about competition, and profit is about competition. And so when many people naively become confused as to why things aren't quote unquote fair, well, let this be clear to them now. Once a person engages in certain fields in life, it's a cutthroat dog-eat-dog world based on power, profit and promotion, and there is no such thing as fairness, but there is the presence of ruthlessness. And some of the most powerful, profitable and promoted people in the world are at the very core utterly ruthless. And that is the reason why they are so powerful. That is the reason why they wield such a powerful influence over others, because of this ruthless aspect to their nature, which is necessary in order to what? Win. Now, further to the point, the so-called devil suggests that
Some things you will understand, some you will not.
this is a contradiction. This is a contradiction. Some things you will understand and some things you will not. Coming from the all-knowing, one would imagine that if the questioner has the skill to be able to hold the devil hostage, why is it that when the devil is forced to reveal the truths to life, some things the questioner will understand and some things the questioner will not understand? But see that there's one word to describe this type of engagement, and it is confusion. What the devil is saying is, yes, I'll answer your question, but you're going to be confused, because some things you're going to understand and some things you're not going to understand. The devil then goes on to say,
In order that you may get my viewpoint, I shall describe myself and correct the false notions people have of me and my place of abode.
well, what's perilously dangerous about this setup is not so much the premise that's been presented, but what is presenting the premise itself. Remember, we're speaking about the devil. We're speaking about the devil. This is a questioner that has the audacity to lower their mind to connect to something which they believe can illuminate them. And then the thing offering the illumination suggests that not only will you be confused, because some things you'll understand and some things you won't understand. It doesn't say some things you will understand now and some things you will understand in the future. The devil doesn't say some things you will understand and some things will take work, but at some point you will understand it. No, what the devil says is, quite categorically, some things you will understand and some things you will not understand. This is a contradiction. This is a contradiction. This is suggesting that a person engaging with this entity will forever be confused and forever be in the dark, thinking they're in the light. But finally, what's really interesting is the devil suggests it's necessary for the questioner to get the devil's particular viewpoint. It's going to be necessary for the devil to describe itself, because again, it's very important to remember, speaking about the mind and not a person, itself. So the mind will describe the nature of itself whilst correcting the false notions people have of it and its place of abode. Well, the first thing to understand here, the place of abode, level 7 of the astral light. The second correction will be to sublimate the understanding, to improve one's understanding of what a so-called devil is, by realizing, when speaking about false notions, the very first false notion is that the devil's not a personality. It's a degenerate magnetic process that takes place in a person's mind, which is made possible by degenerate emotional connections, which then spark particular ideologies in the mind, and these types of things is what leads to false notions. So here is another contradiction, because it clearly is a false notion to expect to lower one's mind in order to see things clearly. This is a false notion in itself. This is a contradiction in itself. And finally, the devil says this is done in order to accomplish a particular viewpoint, to share a particular viewpoint. And why on earth, if one realizes that this engagement is so low within the 7 domains of a person's mind, the functionality of a person's mind, the 7 possible levels of engagement in a person's mind, why on earth would a person believe that by consciously lowering their mind to the lowest possible place that they would be able to get a clear viewpoint, a clear understanding viewpoint? No. If anyone's done their research into the principles that have been presented here over the last 6 years, or even in the last few weeks in terms of this particular run of Department S, it is clear that the further away from the cause one becomes, the further away from the cause one moves, the more polarized one's understanding becomes. That's it for now. We shall continue.
The flow is yours. You've got the flow. Now it's up to you. The flow is yours. Now do what you're gonna do. You've got the flow. The flow is yours. Pull the shades and lock the doors. The flow is yours. You've got the flow. Now it's up to you. The flow is yours. Now do what you're gonna do. You've got the flow. The flow is yours. Pull the shades and lock the doors.
up out of your slumber. This is the tight one.